Australia has a new Australian of the Year, Mick Dodson, a self-described troublemaker who wasted no time raising some issues he thinks the country should be talking about. Top of the list, whether today is the most appropriate one to celebrate Australia Day. Mick Dodson is a member of the Yawuru people from the Broome area of Western Australia. He's currently the director of the National Centre for Indigenous Studies at the ANU and is co-chair of Reconciliation Australia. He was co-author of the 1997 Bringing Them Home report on the stolen generations. I spoke with Professor Dodson from Parliament House in Canberra. Mick Dodson, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
In your own words, you've long been ambivalent about Australia Day. Do you feel differently now that you've accepted this honour of being Australian of the Year?
Yeah, I think I do feel a little different, particularly after last night and today, and I'm starting to reflect more deeply about these things, I think.
When you say you're starting to reflect a bit more deeply, what does that mean?
Well, I suppose I'm reflecting on what it means for me personally. What's this day about? And I find myself saying, well, really this is about who I am as an Australian and how I fit into this Australian nation, where I come from, what my values are, how they stack up with the rest of the country and the rest of the identities, the myriad of identities in Australia, and what it means to be a citizen of this country. Today's a day that we ought to be thinking about those sorts of things and how we might bring ourselves together more than push ourselves apart. And I know some people have problems with this day, some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and other Australians have concerns about it, but I think we perhaps would be better served if we focused on, well, what does it mean to us as people of this nation state we call Australia?
And yet you've called very prominently today, as probably your first call as Australian of the Year, to have a conversation about whether today is the right day to mark Australia Day. Yes, and
I don't have a strong view about this one way or another as to whether it be the 26th of January or some other day. I don't have a problem with the 26th of January, but some people do. Some Australians do, and it's a substantial number of Australians who have concerns about this date, and particularly the first Australians. Let's see if we can't accommodate those concerns. And if we want to accommodate those concerns, let's have a conversation about it. That's all I'm saying.
But as fast as you were saying that, the Prime Minister was saying a very definitive no. In his words, a simple, respectful, straightforward no. That's a pretty short conversation.
Well, from that point of view, perhaps it is. I'm not fussed about the Prime Minister's reaction to that. No, I was asked a question about this, and I gave a truthful answer, and let's move on.
Well, I guess the question is, can you have a conversation without the Prime Minister being part of it?
Certainly not, but that's his comments this morning as part of the conversation, isn't it?
There are other issues that you've long named as key for Indigenous Australians and issues and questions that you've also put forward, and they have been knocked on the head by the Rudd government. Compensation for the stolen generation is one of them. Will that be part of your agenda in your new role?
Well, I don't have an agenda. Pretty much making this up as we go along. I didn't come into this this year thinking, well, if I get the nod as Australian of the Year, these are the things I want done. I mean, there's no agenda here. No, well, I've said in the past I think there ought to be compensation. That's in line with the recommendations of an exhaustive inquiry into the stolen generations. My position's clear. Let's talk about some other things that I think are important. Dealing with Mr. Rudd's desire to have some recognition, acknowledgement put into the Constitution. Perhaps that's something that I might think's worth advocating for this year. I'm certainly going to advocate for us maintaining our efforts and renewing our efforts and redoubling our efforts in closing the gap.
You talked there about some very specific things, but I wonder broadly, what does reconciliation mean to you? When will we know that we've got there?
Well, I'm beginning to think that perhaps reconciliation is a generational journey. That we can take it as far as we can in this generation. Hopefully, we can advance it to such an extent so the next generation can advance it, and so on. Each generation renegotiating the relationship according to their needs and aspirations, and accommodating societal change. And I guess if you wanted to press me and say, well, what is it then? I'd say, well, if certain things were happening, that went unremarked. If our Prime Minister was an Aboriginal woman, well, no big deal. If your local GP was an Aboriginal man, no big deal. Your local supermarket manager was a Torres Strait Islander. That's no big deal. These things go unremarked. I think would have achieved reconciliation.
Do you think you'll see that in your lifetime?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'd love to see that in my lifetime, where no one's worried about these things, that these are normal everyday things. This is how we do business in Australia. Ho-hum, it goes unremarked.
Well, one of the things that you did mention there is something that you might like to talk about during the year ahead, is the need for constitutional recognition. How do you think that could work?
Well, I have a particular view about it, and I've made that clear publicly some time ago, last year in fact, one of the constitutional lectures at the National Archives. But I think I support Mr Rudd in his plan to have something inserted in a preamble that recognises, acknowledges Indigenous Australia and our position in this country and our place in the nation state of Australia. I think we should go further, and we should talk about those things and put something in the operative parts of the Constitution. I'm not sure if the Prime Minister is open to that. He's indicated that he's looking at the preamble, but perhaps an opportunity to go beyond that.
Such as when you talk about operative parts of the Constitution?
Well, I don't know if many people know that there's an article, there's a section in the Constitution, Section 27, which is blatantly racially discriminatory, which allows the states to ban people from voting on the basis of race. I mean, why do we need something like that in our Constitution in this modern age? This is 2009. Why don't we get rid of that, for example? And there are probably other things that we could entrench in the Constitution that I think would be desirable. For example, the principles of equality, the principles of non-discrimination, the prohibition of racial discrimination. I don't see how we'd have any problems with those sorts of things.
Where does the emergency intervention in the Northern Territory fit in that context?
Well, it suspends the Racial Discrimination Act and violates our obligations under a whole range of other international human rights standards. And I've said all along that the intervention should comply with our obligations to the rest of the world so far as human rights is concerned, and the Racial Discrimination Act ought to be reinstated.
Mick Dodson, you've described yourself as a bit of a ratbag and a troublemaker. Is that a style that you plan to change in your new role?
It's bloody hard to teach old dog new tricks, but I'll have to learn some new tricks. I think it's sometimes I can be a bit belligerent. I must confess, but I'll try and lighten up a bit this year. Try my very best.
Mick Dodson, many thanks for your time and congratulations again.
Happy Australia Day to you too, and all the viewers.